Okay, welcome everyone to today's Google Webmaster Central Office Hours Hangouts. My name is John Mueller. I am a Webmaster Trends Analyst here at Google Switzerland, and my goal with this Hangout is try to help you guys with any Webmaster web search type questions that Google might be involved in. I put something slightly different together for today, just to start off with. Sometimes we see issues that start coming up at some point and that we think might be interesting to share with others as well, where from our point of view, the engineering team finds something really weird happening, and we might go out and contact some webmasters who are doing these type of things, but we don't have any system built into Webmaster Tools, for example, that helps to alert you of these issues. So I thought maybe it'd be interesting to compile some of the things we've seen recently to make it possible for you guys to check your sites as well, that these things aren't causing any problems. So these are three of the issues that we ran across in the last couple of weeks as being a little bit more visible, more problematic from our point of view. On the one hand, serving smartphone Googlebot the desktop pages. That's something we occasionally see. Similar kind of, I guess, well, in the sense that it's both about mobile, disallowing crawling of the smartphone pages or the redirects. And then we saw this really weird type of broken content type cloaking type issue. So the first issue that we saw there is specifically about websites that use dynamic serving or that use separate URLs. And they try to recognize the user agent of the user that's accessing those pages and try to kind of bring that issue up. Ooh, I don't know. Can you guys see my presentation?
Yes.
Perfect. Yep. All right. Great. So, like I said, these pages try to serve the right content to the right user depending on the user agent. And sometimes we notice that they're explicitly trying to recognize Googlebot and always serve at the desktop page. And then what sometimes happens is desktop users will see the desktop page, normal Googlebot sees the desktop page, that's great. Smartphone users see the smartphone page, but the smartphone Googlebot, it looks like an iPhone user agent just has Googlebot in it as well, end up seeing the desktop page as well. And that's a problem from our point of view, because then we can't really see the smartphone page and we can't treat it appropriately in search. So that's something that's really tricky to recognize on your own, because you look at it in your phone and it looks fine, and it's rare that you go out and actually look at your pages using the smartphone Googlebot. And that's something you can check in Webmaster Tools using the rendered view. It's really easy to recognize if you're showing the right version of the page to smartphone Googlebot as well. The other issue with regards to mobile sites that we saw recently is when these sites use separate URLs or use specific content on those URLs that's disallowed from crawling. So sometimes it happens that you have your redirect in the JavaScript that takes a look at the user agent, sends the user to the right version of your page. And if that JavaScript file is blocked by robots text, then we'll essentially not be able to recognize this redirect to the mobile page. Other times we've seen the mobile site specifically blocked by robots.txt, potentially because a webmaster thought maybe there are duplicate content issues or those kind of things, which definitely isn't a problem from our point of view. And maybe they'll go out and robot the whole m.dot domain, or they have specific URL patterns for the mobile pages, and they block that from being crawled. And if you do that, then essentially we can't recognize your mobile site. We can't treat it appropriately in search. Slightly similar to that, if the JavaScript or the CSS files that you use on your mobile-friendly pages significantly make it look mobile-friendly, then that's something that we'd love to crawl as well, so that we can also confirm that it's really mobile-friendly. So making sure that those files aren't blocked by the robots text is also a good practice. And like before, you can check this in Fetch as Google in Webmaster Tools to kind of see what Googlebot would see or where it would get stuck. So take the mobile URL that you would see in your browser and copy that into Webmaster Tools and see if you can actually see the rendered view there in the normal way. And finally, this really weird issue that we ran across on a bunch of sites was where the normal desktop user would be seeing a normal HTML page, but whenever Googlebot crawled, because it doesn't have an accept a content type, in the request, it would get JSON content. So that would be some JavaScript or some data files, essentially, that we can't really index. So the content is kind of in there, but it's not in a way that we can actually index. And that would end up with Googlebot being stuck with this weird JavaScript file instead of the actual HTML of the page. And once again, this is something you can check in the rendered fetches Google tool in Webmaster Tools. It's almost like a promotion for this tool last week. But these are really weird issues that we ran across on a bunch of different sites. So I thought it might be useful to kind of check here. So just to compile everything, I'd really double check your important pages with the rendered fetches Google. Also make sure if you're using mobile URLs that those work really well with the fetches Google. Double check also that we can pick up the content and that we can actually crawl the CSS and JavaScript files that are involved there. And if you want to go a step further, you might want to consider creating a script that kind of uses the Googlebot user agent, uses the Googlebot request headers that we usually use, and just double checks your pages occasionally so that you can make sure that you don't accidentally run into this situation. Because from our point of view, all of these aren't really technical issues that we would say we want to alert the webmaster about this, because when this content is blocked or when you're serving us slightly different content, it's not that we'd say this is a clear-cut error, but when we look at those pages manually and we can tell you do actually have a really good smartphone site, you're just hiding it away from Google, that's something you kind of have to recognize on your own, because we wouldn't say this is something that we could automatically recognize as an error. All right, so with that, that was kind of this introduction to the weird issues that we ran across recently.
Hey, John, can I interject for a second?
Sure.
I just had an idea for a great feature in Webmaster Tools that if you could show us some of the important pages, what Google thinks is important and how they render, instead of us going in and checking, that would be awesome. That would be great. You could even put big red outlines around problems on the page, and don't say anything about it. Just put a big red outline, and make people wonder, what's going on there.
Yeah, I think the problem with, especially like the roboted JavaScript files, roboted CSS, it's not something that we can call out as a problem because we just don't know what's actually missing. It might be that this is a JavaScript file that you use for your analytics, and Googlebot never has to look at that. And that's absolutely fine to keep that roboting. But if it's something that does something significant, then we wouldn't even recognize that automatically. We just say, well, it's a JavaScript file. It's being blocked. We don't really know what it's doing. We can't really tell the webmaster that this is a critical problem they need to urgently fix unless someone happens to manually look at that page in a smartphone and say, well, on a smartphone it looks really legitimate, like a smartphone site, but Googlebot itself doesn't see that.
Cool. Yeah, I get that part. But, I mean, there's obviously pages that Google detects on the site that they think are important based on links and whatnot. If you could automatically render 2 or 3 of those, 1, we would know what you think is important, and we could change that if it's not correct. 2, we could see if it renders properly and maybe fix some stuff if it's not rendering properly. Even if it has some quality issues, we might be able to see that too. So anyway, just a feature suggestion.
You can get some of that information in the top search query section, where you can filter by top pages. So that would be based on the impressions or clicks that you're getting for those pages, which is kind of a proxy for what Googlebot would think was interesting. But having that combined with a view of the rendered version, that sounds really interesting. Kind of like a one-off report where you'd go in there and say, well, this looks good, or this looks really different from what I would see when I look at those pages.
Cool.
John, can I ask a question about some edge cases maybe?
Sure.
So could you talk a little bit more about the buffer HTTPS migration? Because initially we thought it was a penalty based on what they wrote. They said that wasn't the case. You said that wasn't the case. And then they said initially they said they did the HTTP to HTTPS migration correctly, but now it's turning out to be they didn't. But it seems like Google's saying also that you guys admit that there was an issue specifically around something that you maybe considered you should have handled with these migrations. Is this something we should be concerned about, and should we look at certain things? Should we not make the same mistake if there was a mistake made?
I don't think that's something you'd really need to worry about. So I'm not sure exactly which edge case it hit there, but it was something kind of special on our side where we weren't forwarding the signals appropriately, and that kind of got stuck with that side. So that's something that the engineering team was able to fix really quickly. The site itself chose to kind of go back to HTTPS because I felt that was kind of safer, which is fine from our point of view as well. At the same time, they also had a really old penalty on their site, and that's something that they weren't aware of. That's something that usually when we see a site with technical issues that also has a manual action, we'll go in and say, well, fix the manual action first so that you don't have to worry about that causing any kind of weird effects that you might mistake for technical issues. So that's something where if you kind of run into this weird situation where you're seeing something that looks like a technical issue and you notice you have a manual action, I definitely kind of like split that work up and make sure that you're taking care of both sides and not that one side is kind of leaking into the other and making it look different than it actually is. So this was essentially just a normal technical issue on our side, nothing really crazy. I don't think there were really any other sites involved that were seeing something similar or where we were kind of running into this edge case as well.
So it was nothing that Buffer did on their end?
As far as I remember, it was nothing specific that they did there. So the manual action is obviously something that at some point they did, but with the change from HTTP to HTTPS, I don't think there was anything specific that they did wrong there.
John, can I ask you a question about the search box?
Sure.
Okay, so can you just highlight a couple of things in regards to the search box? I mean, how would a small business owner go ahead and, if they were qualified to get a search box, what do they have to do?
Essentially just copy and paste the markup onto their pages and specify the internal site search URL that they have. Most smaller sites or most CMS systems have a kind of a site search built in already, so it's not something that they'd have to build up. It's essentially just like copying and pasting the JavaScript code there and editing the URL to match their own site.
Okay.
And I think Yoast has it included in his WordPress plugin, so basically you just have to enable that plugin and it'll do it all for you. And I imagine that's something that'll happen for other CMSs at some point too.
Okay. So if a site has like 4,000 HTML pages,
you just put it on the home page. You wouldn't need to put it on the individual pages.
Yeah, just a markup and that's it.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thanks, John.
Sure. All right, let's go through some of these questions here. Small websites with a couple unique visitors per day from search results can be penalized by algorithms like Panda or the page layout algorithm. What when they rank only in regional results? Essentially, our algorithms try to be generic in the sense that they apply to as many kinds of pages as possible. That could be across different languages, could be across different locales, and that's something where they try to take the factors into account appropriately. So if you're a small website and you're targeting a small niche area and our algorithms notice that you're doing something slightly sneaky, then it might be that our algorithms respond in a slight way. It's not that they'll just like turn on or turn off. They usually try to be more granular in that sense, and that they try to react in a way that's appropriate for the issue that they find there. So Theoretically, these algorithms could apply to smaller websites as well. They can apply to big websites. It's something where we just try to be appropriate in our response there.
What do you mean by sneaky?
Well, I mean, it depends on what these algorithms are looking at. So if they're specifically looking at the quality of the content, for example, and you have a bit of low-quality content on your site, something old maybe that you left behind, and the rest of your site is completely fine, then that's something where we'll probably pick up on the lower quality content, but we're not going to like hide your site in the search results just because of one small issue there. We try to respond in an appropriate way.
Right. Okay.
So with regards to the kind of sites being hit by a penalty, can you actually kind of get, obviously it affects the actual normal SERP rankings, but will it actually affect the local rankings as well, so the regional results? Because obviously I know a lot of that's based off kind of your map listing and your Google Plus listing, but obviously I know you released an update that obviously takes into account more normal ranking factors. So would a penalty affect your local rankings as well?
So you specifically mean the local business rankings, the kind of the map results, those kind of things. That's not something that's directly tied into the web search results, and I couldn't really say anything for them. So I don't know how they would handle this kind of situation if they have similar algorithms. I'm not really sure about that. But in general, when it comes to the web search results, even for like localized queries where we're showing normal web search results, that's something where this could come into play with regards to the kind of the maps, local business entries. That's something that's generally handled completely separately.
Okay, no, that's fine.
Okay, how Google treats links do follow with brand or URL address and anchor text when they're added by the owner linked site and don't include the money keywords. On websites about the same topic, is this still an unnatural link? We want to improve our visibility in our niche. So if you're adding these links to other people's websites and these are essentially not editorial links, then we would treat those as unnatural links. And it's not so much the fact of including your kind of your right keywords in there or not, but essentially if these are PageRank passing links that you place somewhere else, then that's kind of an unnatural link. So that's something I generally try to avoid doing there. If you're doing this to get traffic to your website, I will treat this like any other kind of advertising that you have on your site or that you have on other people's sites, and just make sure that there's a no-follow there. And then users can click through to those links to your website, but then those links aren't passing any PageRank.
Because I'm seeing like the same thing happen, like here, you know, and a company just pasting, you know, their kind of little logo on contractors' sites.
Yeah, I mean, to some extent, we try to recognize that automatically, but if you're putting this on other people's websites and it's not something that they're editorially doing on their websites, then we would see that as an unnatural link, and that's something that I'd avoid doing there.
I mean, it's multiplied now by like 1.7 million.
1.7 million. Where are you coming up with that number?
Widgets.
Widgets.
That's how much they have,
okay. I mean, if this is something where you think we should be taking a look at that from a web spam point of view, you're welcome to send us that information, and I can forward that to the web spam team. But usually it's something where we have our clear recommendations, so that's not really something I'd say has really changed or is in any way special for that. But you're welcome to send it our way. We can take a look at that and see what we need to do there, if anything.
Yeah, I'll ping you.
Sure, great, thanks. As mentioned in the quality guidelines, can we use a tactic of redirecting links to an intermediate page blocked by robots text on links such as paid advertisements on third-party sites as an alternative to no-follow tag, and how would that look? Theoretically, you can do that. I recommend doing that maybe on a separate domain so that those links really don't pass any page rank, anything to your main domain. So if you can't like disavow those links, if those external links aren't with a no follow on there, then kind of redirecting them through a roboted domain is something you could do there as well. And that'll block the passing of PageRank to your final pages as well. And I think that's something that some of the affiliate systems, they've been using that for years now. It's essentially just a way of kind of blocking those links from being directly linked to the final page. And that's fine. That's a possibility to do that. Google's main focus is to return the relevant result to the user. A lot of people that perform well in the search results are big, well-known companies with large brands. What's the best way for a small company to perform well in Google and to compete? In general, this is something you almost have to see as a normal kind of a business or marketing problem, in the sense that there are some people that have really big websites. They offer maybe a lot of different products. But as a small company, if you're trying to compete directly with them, that's probably not going to work so well. But if you have something very specific, something like a niche market that you can focus on, you're probably going to have a little bit more success there. So instead of trying to compete with the really big brands, try to find a focus area of your own that you can really kind of dominate, where you have the best content, where you have the best products, where you have the best service on your website, the best information on your website that the bigger companies can't really keep up with. And that's essentially a really great way to get even a small company started fairly well in search. And thanks to the internet being as global as it is, you don't have to worry about just your local customers that might find your business, but you really have a much larger audience as well. So it's definitely something where the internet isn't locked down by the big companies and nobody with a small or new website has any chance of getting in. There are lots of opportunities and there are lots of new ways to kind of get into the search results, have something fantastic, and have something that users want to find from your website.
Hey, John.
Yes.
I have a bug report I should probably get out of the way before we get too far along. Is it okay if I share my screen?
Sure.
I promise it's clean.
Okay.
Okay. Do you see this search result here?
Yeah.
Okay. So everything here in yellow is not actually on the site. This is a fan from my YouTube channel, and he tells me that this Colorado Standby and Norwell Power Systems, etc., this is not actually in the PDF. These are actually their competitors' names. And somehow Google is rewriting the titles or confusing the competitor with this PDF. And although the competitor has similar PDFs, they're in no way identical. And so they don't understand why their PDFs on their site have their competitors' names on some of their technical manuals. Does that make sense?
It doesn't really make sense that we would do that, yeah. But I'd need the specific URLs to kind of see what exactly is happening there. So if you could paste them in the chat or somewhere where I can get to them, I'd be happy to take a look at that with the engineering team.
Sure. The easiest way is just to do the site search for norwell.com, just as it says up there.
Okay. The thing to kind of keep in mind with site queries is that they're sometimes a bit artificial, in the sense that we might be showing like the generic title or not the title that users would normally see when they search in the search results. But I'm happy to take a look at that to kind of see where we're getting that from or what we can do to avoid that happening.
Sure. That's essentially what I told them.
Perfect. Okay. Did Google use the disavow data on the last Penguin update? And if Google runs Penguin again, will the disavow data be used? Yes, we did use the disavow data for the last update, and we'll definitely be using it going forward as well. We've been using it in the meantime too, but of course the Penguin algorithm hasn't been updated yet. So that's something I'm hoping will come at some point in the near or midterm future. I don't have any specific dates for you guys. Yes.
Sorry. There's been quite a controversy actually going on. When you say you're using the disavow file periodically, what exactly do you mean you're using it? Because some people think that they can use the disavow file to get rid of negative SEO and to just disavow any links that either they made or whoever made. And then there's other people who think that it doesn't work that way, not on a regular basis, only if you have a manual action or only if you have a penguin penalty. And again, that's only if Google remembers to use it in those circumstances, and you have to go and delete a bunch of links anyways. The disavow file is almost kind of secondary in a way, if that makes sense. Can you confirm a little bit if you're using it on a regular, like it automatically no-follows links or something like that?
Yeah, so we do use it automatically. It essentially is run, well, it's processed when you submit it, and we use it every time we crawl the web. And when we find links to your site that are in your disavow file, we'll essentially treat them similar to a no-follow link. So that's something that happens automatically all the time. It doesn't matter what kind of issues your site has, or if it might not have any issues at all, and you just say, I just don't want to be associated with this weird stuff I found linking to my website, and you put it in your disavow file, and we'll essentially kind of break that connection, treat it as a no-follow link. With regards to manual action, that's one place where the web spam team kind of expects you to do a little bit more and actually expects you to go out and manually remove some of these problematic links as well. So algorithmic, we definitely process this all the time. For manual actions, for reconsideration requests, the web spam team really wants to be sure that you're not just playing a game and updating the disavow files back and forth, but that you're actually taking this problem seriously and kind of tackling at the root.
So just again, to make sure it's perfectly clear, so if you put a link in your disavow file, you will lose that link juice. Either good or bad, you will lose that link juice.
Yes.
All right.
Well,
thank you very much. I have to go back and apologize to a bunch of people. But thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, well, page rank, not link juice, but
okay.
And John?
Yes.
Related to that, if you're losing that link juice and you're no following those links, how does Penguin then relate to that? If that's going on an ongoing basis, if you're no following your links, how does that relate to once Penguin is updated? That just removes the penalty involved?
So essentially, Penguin is a web spam algorithm, and it picks up on these kind of unnatural links as well. And that's something where if those links aren't passing any PageRank, we wouldn't see them as unnatural links. We'd essentially kind of treat them as advertising that people can click on to go to your site, but they don't pass any PageRank. It's not a problem for us. So by disavowing those kind of links, that's something where these algorithms, when they get run again, they'll see, oh, well, these links shouldn't be counted anymore. The webmaster doesn't want any PageRank passing here, so we shouldn't be taking those into account for any kind of web spam purposes.
Okay. Thanks.
All right. We have another question in the Q&A here. We sponsor gamers, and in return, they put links in their YouTube videos. We get a lot of traffic from these links. We want to keep them in place. However, people copy the description onto their websites, and now we have a manual penalty. So kind of like I mentioned before, with a manual action, the web spam team wants to see some level of change happening there, in the sense that they'd like to see these links kind of being removed or no-followed. You can also use the disavow tool for that. In general, if people are just copy and pasting descriptions from YouTube and putting them on your site, that's probably not something that the manual actions team would worry about that much. So my guess is, without knowing your site, without knowing the specifics around it, that maybe there are other issues around unnatural links that you need to take care of as well. So as far as I know from YouTube, these links definitely have a no-follow. If people are copying them directly, then I imagine that's a smaller group of people, and probably not something that the web spam team would say this is a critical problem you need to fix by yourself. So I take a step back and look at your site overall and see if maybe there are other things that you're doing that could be seen as unnatural links. Maybe you've been going out and putting your site into tons of directories or doing link exchanges or doing anything else like that. Or maybe your SEO was buying links without you actually knowing that. And these are the kind of things that the web spam team would be picking up on. So that's something where I wouldn't specifically focus too much on those video links. It might be that this is really the only part of the problem, but probably there are bigger issues there involved that you need to take care of. We're unable to recover our site since October 2013, suspect Penguin. We already removed all unnatural links, but still not revoked the penalty. So the Penguin algorithm runs periodically. It hasn't run in quite some time now, so we're hoping it'll be picked up again in the near future. If this is really a problem specific to that and you've cleaned up all of the web spam issues involved there, then that's something where you'll probably see changes when it runs again. At the same time, I wouldn't focus completely on this and also look at what you need to do for your site overall. Oftentimes we'll see that one algorithm picks up one problem, but actually the bigger problem is maybe the content on the site, or maybe the type of site itself, where if you're just aggregating content from other sources, then that's probably something that the other algorithms would pick up on as well. So I take a step back and make sure you have everything covered, make sure you've really cleaned up these link issues if you find them, and to some extent wait until the Penguin algorithm runs again to see how that's resolved. But in the meantime, of course, you can do other things to keep traffic coming to your site and to kind of be visible in search or be visible with your clients, your users. We observe search results top 10 for many keywords, and sometimes there isn't any change past many months. I mean, domains from the top 11 to 100 can't go to the top 10 in rankings. Is there something like frozen search results? No, not really. It's not the case that we kind of manually curate these search results. We really need to make sure that these are all done algorithmically. We don't really have time to manually maintain like all search results. So that's not something where there's any kind of an algorithm in place that freezes the sites in those search results. Sometimes we're just seeing that this is kind of the usual activity in that some sites are really, really good and they show up in the top 10, and there's a big gap between those sites that are really, really good or that are doing really well in search and the sites that are kind of not that bad, but they're not really that great either. And sometimes that gap is something that you might see as something like this, where you'd feel that the search results, the top search results aren't being replaced by the lower ones, but that's not necessarily a sign that they're stuck there. It's just that the other sites really need to kind of step up their game and kind of take it to the next level.
Quick question about a server. Let's say you have a server problem and something's wrong with like 100 pages. They're slow and they come back to normal. And let's say there was an update, just a normal Google update on the weekend. Will that kind of lower the site's rankings because of site speed just for that particular time?
It shouldn't. Yeah,
no?
It shouldn't. So we primarily use the site speed as a way to recognize really, really slow sites. And if you just have a temporary issue, then that's not going to be a problem. And likewise, if you improve your site speed or the rendering time of individual pages by, I don't know, 10% to go down from 10 seconds to 9 seconds or from 10 seconds to 1 second even, that's not something where you'll see a big change in the search results. We really mostly try to differentiate between sites that are really, really, really slow and sites that are kind of normal. And we don't really look at the individual milliseconds and say, well, we'll rank this higher because it's 10th of a millisecond faster today. So that's likewise, you wouldn't see any big drop if your site was just a bit slow over the weekend.
Okay.
John, could you tell us if you've been testing the new Penguin refresh that is coming sometime in before the end of the year in the live search results where webmasters may or may not have noticed this test?
I don't know.
I have no idea if you've been testing it.
I don't know. it's possible that we test this, but I think the thing to keep in mind with all these tests is we run on the order of hundreds of tests all the time. And every time you search, you're going to be in, I don't know, 10 to maybe 50 or 100 different experiments at any time. So these things run all the time. And there are lots of different experiments that we do. And some of them with regards to the layout of the page, of the search results pages, some of them with regards to the ranking. And it's really hard to say whether one specific change that some webmasters notice is related to a very specific experiment that we might also be running at the same time. And that's something where even if we take that back to the engineering team and say, hey, on this date, 5 webmasters noticed this change in the search results, what was that from? They'd have to like take a couple of hours of their time and say, well, we'll have to diagnose what exactly happened on this day for these exact search sessions to figure out which experiment might have triggered something there. So that's not something we generally even get involved in. So if we see these things, these fluctuations happening, for the most part, we'll say, well, we're always experimenting. We're always working on improving the search results and trying to find a way to make them work better. But it's not the case that we like explicitly point out to a specific experiment and say, this specific ranking change experiment that this team in, I don't know, Tokyo has been working on is what you specifically saw here, because that's really hard to kind of dig out.
So the bottom line,
I understand that, but so you're not confirming or denying that Penguin has been tested in the past 2, 3, 4 weeks. You don't know.
I don't know. I honestly don't know if we've been testing that specifically in the live search results.
So at least like when you're going to be when the update's going to be live, okay? It won't be as the other update, right? In terms of the way the transition from the results now to the results in whenever they update.
I don't know. I can't promise you anything with regards to what the search results will look like then. But it's something, because so many people have been waiting for it, we'll definitely let you guys know that it's happening. Maybe we can let you guys know a day ahead of time so that you can kind of like see the change. I can't really promise that, but we'll definitely not just try to like put it out there and maybe a month later say, oh, by the way, it's been live for a month now. I know you guys have been waiting for this update, and it's something that we'd at least like to let you guys know that you can also compare what's actually happened. How can we know if a backlink to our website is good or bad for our ranking and our search position? In general, if you're not aware of having placed any kind of weird backlinks or doing link schemes, those kind of things, I wouldn't worry too much about this. It's something that the normal webmaster who doesn't go out and do explicit link building, those kind of activities, you don't really need to worry about that. There are always going to be weird and shady people that link to your website, spammers that copy the URL from your website and link to it from their spammy pages because they want to have something that looks legitimate in there as well. And it's not really the case that you need to kind of review every individual link there. On the other hand, if you have been doing link building or you know your SEO has been doing link building, then that's something you can kind of take a look at and think about, how did this link happen to show up on this page? Is this something that my SEO was involved in? And if you can tell that this is something that your SEO was involved in and this link wouldn't be there otherwise, then that's something you might want to take a look at and see, is this really a good link that I want to keep to my site, an editorial recommendation of my site? Or is this something that essentially directly or indirectly was placed there because of something that I wanted to do? So those are essentially the 2 points you need to be looking at. But again, if you have a normal website and you've never been doing any weird link building activities, then reviewing the individual links is generally not something you need to do.
Hey, John, can I ask a duplicate content question?
Sure.
Well, it's more specifically repurposing content. So how would Google feel about taking, for instance, a how-to article that's been on a site for a while and creating a slide deck presentation with photos and an outline of the article along with a voiceover, basically, of the article text, and creating like a video tutorial of that, just as a different form of basically the same kind of content, and then placing it on YouTube with the same title or headline and description, and having a link back to the site then, and also maybe syndicating, for lack of a better word, distributing the same kind of content along other sites, so YouTube and then Vimeo, and maybe putting the audio on a podcast site and then the slide deck on SlideShare, things like that. How do they feel about that?
From our point of view, that's not anything problematic. So we wouldn't be trying to recognize the words in a video and say, oh, this matches this article that I found a while back. Essentially, we treat these as individual pieces of content, and we try to rank them appropriately. And sometimes it helps to put something on a video. Sometimes it helps to have like the text version of the slides directly. Sometimes people are looking specifically for one of these forms of content. So if you think your users want to see your content in different medias, then...
Yeah, because I've gotten requests for videos on the site, and we really haven't done that before. And I'm just trying to think of efficient ways to put a lot of the content into video format, and that seems like one. But I also wanted to make the best use of distributing it to the widest range of people, you know?
Yeah, that's essentially up to you. So what happens in general with duplicate content is if we recognize that it's the same, for example, if it's an HTML page, if it's a doc or something like that where we have the text, then we can compare the text and we can say, well, this is a duplicate of this other article, and this other article is essentially the one we want to show in search, so we'll just show that one. So it's not that the site is penalized or demoted in any way. It's just we know there are two copies of the same thing, and this is the version we pick to show in search. We don't show the duplicates in search. If you have it in like translated, if you have it in video format, in converted into slides, for example, all of that is essentially not the same content anymore. It's something unique that kind of covers the same topical area, but that's not something where our algorithms would get involved and say, well, this is someone reading the text from that web page on a video, therefore we shouldn't show it together with the text page in the search results. Essentially, these are unique pieces of content. We maybe want to show them together in the search results if we find that they're relevant to the user. So
how about putting the text version in the captioning in the YouTube video, where it gives the option for putting the captioning in?
You can do that. I don't see any problem with that. And again, this is something where we wouldn't penalize a site for doing this, for having duplicate content. We just pick one or the other URL and we show it in search. If we can recognize that it's the same text, then we'll just pick one of these and show it in search. And it might be the doc, or the HTML page. It might be the video with the whole caption in there. But if the video doesn't have the caption in there, then essentially we say this is a video that's on this page, this is a text that's on this page. We can treat them separately. That's completely fine. From a practical point of view, I probably just try it out with a couple of pages and see how they go, how people respond to the video format, how people respond to the slides. And maybe you'll find people love the video format and they just want to consume everything on video. Or maybe you'll find that your content is maybe a bit more complicated and doesn't work that well on video. It's kind of up to you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Hey, John, can I ask a question based on, I see there's a country-specific question coming up in the Q&A.
Okay, go for it.
It's basically how to handle Hreflang, but now with the secure versus non-secure. So essentially we have 4 domains, the secure, the non-secure, and then the country-specific, Hreflanged over to the secure and the non-secure. So what's the best way to make sure we get that right? Is that right, that we have the original domain but then 301 to the secure version. And then we have the hreflang country specific non-secure, but that one is also 301 across to its secure. But the hreflang goes from secure to secure, so you still only end up with one ranking domain.
So essentially what you do there is pick one of these URLs as canonical, essentially. So you'd have one canonical for maybe the US version, one canonical for the UK version, and do the hreflang between these canonical versions, so between the US and the UK version of this page, and just do the rel canonical within the language version. So if you have, for example, the HTTP and HTTPS version, and you pick the HTTPS version as canonical, then the HTTP version will have the canonical tag set to the HTTPS version, and that one will have the hreflang set across to maybe the US and the UK versions. So you kind of have two layers there. On top, the hreflang between the canonical versions, and within each language and country version, you'd have the canonical pointing to your preferred one for that set.
Right. I may have to watch that back again.
I might have to draw this up for one of the next Hangouts, yeah. It's a good idea.
Well, thanks. It's also within our Webmaster Tools, we found that it's been about 3 weeks since we moved over to secure, but the impressions within the non-secure have just dived. I mean, it's down to 5% of what it was, but the secure has in no way caught up with that yet. It seems to know that we don't want one version, but it doesn't seem to know yet that we do want the other.
Okay, that shouldn't be happening like that, though. That's something that should be more or less just moving from one version to the other. So
yeah, it's not like it's 301 into a completely different domain. It's the same domain, just with an S.
Okay, yeah, I can take a look at that to see what's happening there, because that should essentially kind of be seen as equivalent, and what goes down by one should come up with the other one within, I'd say, like a couple of days. And if it's been 3 weeks, then something weird is happening there. Maybe, I don't know, some weird edge case that we have to take a look at, Barry.
Well, it wouldn't be the first for our site.
Yeah, but still, we should be able to pick that up appropriately.
Right. I mean, the funny thing is, if we click into the sitemap within the secure version, it says, say, for example, 400 out of 1400 are indexed.
Mm-hmm.
But if you then click through to the next page where the graph is, those lines don't represent 1400 or 400 at all.
Okay. So,
but I don't know what I would send you to look at that.
Yeah.
Unless you have access to our Webmaster Tools.
But that's something where usually from the indexing side, we should be able to pick those up regardless of anything from like a quality point of view or otherwise. So especially if you have redirect set up to the right pages, then we should be able to figure that out fairly quickly. But I can double check to see what's actually happening there.
All right, I'll reply to the previous post then. Thanks.
John, it should match, like after you switch over, like over a certain amount of days. Like I can share my screen. But
well, it should be settling down to something similar. So it's never going to be exactly the same, but it should be within like the normal fluctuations.
So, for example, here's a search engine roundtable. So you see, I switched over on about the 12th, I believe. And then, so I was the high graph in terms of impressions, about 1 million impressions. You know, probably about on average 850,000. And then I switched over. You see it gradually go up, but the highest point ever hit was like 750. It's probably averaging about 500, 600,000 impressions versus the average of about 800,000 impressions per day, 900,000 impressions per day.
Yeah.
Is that what people should expect, or?
It should be kind of similar. So it's really hard to tell on your graph to see like what it looked like before, if this was just like a temporary bump. Sometimes
it's between the five. It looks like it's on average between 600 and 800,000.
Yeah.
Obviously, weekends dip, and then now it's like it's like in the 500.
Yeah, I can double check on that.
Yeah, we're getting a
Let's go
different
for
ratio.
it. Okay, great.
John, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Thank you. I'm thinking about marking up. If marking up an HTML4 website with microdata, knowing that this markup syntax doesn't validate in W3C, as microdata should be used with HTML5 in order to validate, is this creating any issues with regards to crawling, indexing, and ranking? I mean, can that markup be ignored by Googlebot?
No, that's completely fine. So we don't expect valid markup, and most of the web doesn't have valid markup, so we have to live with that.
I know, but I was thinking just to use microdata in HTML4, and if that's fine.
That's fine, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we have a bunch of questions still here, so let me try to go through them a bit quicker so that we get through a bunch of these. If someone is in the UK based on IP and visits our German site, can I redirect them to the UK site if I have an equivalent page? In general, this is something we don't recommend doing because it's very easy to also redirect Googlebot to the local page as well. So if Googlebot crawls from the US and is always redirected to the US version of the page, then they'll never see the German version, and we'll never be able to index that. So our recommendation is to show something like a banner on top to let the user view the UK site, but also click through to go to the German site, or vice versa. So that's generally our recommendation there. You think it's better to have our blog on our website or to have it on WordPress with links from and to our website? Essentially, that's up to you. So both options work. Sometimes it makes sense to put it on the main domain if you want people to kind of associate strongly with your website. Sometimes it makes sense to put it on a separate domain or to keep it on Blogger, whatever. Will a closable advertising banner showing once for each visitor trigger the top-heavy ads penalty and/or Panda? So when we look at the page layout, we look at what we crawl with Googlebot, and since Googlebot doesn't use any cookies, we'll probably see this ad every time we visit. So that's something that we would take into account there. So you might want to consider turning it around and kind of showing the first visitors your great content. And if you see that these are repeat visitors, encourage them to sign up, for example. But showing them a big banner from the beginning is something we'll probably index or we'll use for the page layout algorithm. Why would Google stop showing our homepage for generic search and show alternating subpages after showing the homepage in the search results for 8 years? Just about every search results shows the homepages for all of the listings. I'd have to have explicit examples to see what you're looking at there. So if you want, you can send me some links to search pages and the titles or the pages that you think should be ranking and what we're actually ranking, so that we can take a look with the engineers. In Webmaster Tools, we see that we have backlinks that can be considered bad, so how can we delete them and not affect badly our ranking score and our search position? Essentially, there are two ways you can get rid of them. One is to actually remove those from the other sites if it's something you have access to, or something where you can email the webmaster to request that. Another thing you can do is to use the disavow file, which essentially tells us to ignore these specific links. And with the disavow file, I'd recommend using the domain directive as much as possible so that we can actually take out all of these links instead of you having to really figure out what exact URL from this kind of shady site is linking. So using the domain directive makes it a lot easier to avoid mistakes there. In Webmaster Central, it tells you you can use JSON LD, microdata, or RDFA, but Google Developer Site doesn't tell anything about RDFA, and even says we recommend using JSON LD. Alternately, you can use microdata. Can I use RDFA for a site link search setting? I don't know specifically. So I'm pretty sure you can use RDFA for that. I just know for a lot of the rich snippets formats that we do use, we don't support JSON LD for those at the moment. So we kind of expect the formats that we have in the Help Center or that we link to from schema.org. But I don't know about RDFA with the site link search box in particular. So I can double check on that. Let's see if we can get some higher clicked ones here. If I use a SERP monitoring tool to check 500 keyword positions daily for my websites, this will affect Google's search click-through rate. My question in turn affect my rankings within Google as my click-through rate goes down. So there are two aspects here. If you're using automated queries to determine the ranking of your pages, that's against our terms of service, and that would be against our Webmaster guidelines. So that's something I'd like to discourage as much as possible. The other aspect here is if we recognize that these are automated queries, then generally that's not something that we count towards the click-through rate or the impressions. So we try to recognize that where we can. But essentially, if you're using tools to scrape our search results to figure out your rankings, that would be something that would be against our Webmaster guidelines. You're essentially crawling pages that are blocked by robots.txt, and we really don't want you guys to be doing that. So instead of using a SERP monitoring tool like that, maybe considering using the top search queries in Webmaster Tools. Could you elaborate on that decision? Just a second.
John, so are there scenarios?
Just one sec.
Could you elaborate on the decision to re-include spammy news sites in Turkey 4 hours after the ban? Pages with spam are still accessible via Google. How should us white hatters take this? I don't know about the specific situation in Turkey, so I can't really tell you about that. I know it's something where various people from the WebSpam team have been working on this to try to find a solution, and where we saw a lot of spam happening on some really big news sites, and where we had to take some pretty strong action there. But I don't know what was involved there, how much was cleaned up, what might still be out there. I think you sent me an email as well, and I also forwarded that to the WebSpam team to double check. All right, go ahead, Joshua.
Okay. Yeah, so in what you were talking about last, are there scenarios where that might hurt or affect someone's ranking negatively, seeing as it is against the guidelines if they were using, you know, any automated query?
I can't think of anything specific at the moment there, but since it is against our terms of service and against our Webmaster guidelines, I imagine we reserve the right to take action where we see that this is really causing a problem for us. So that's something where sometimes we'll do things like block IP addresses, block IP ranges, those kind of things. But it's something that does cause a lot of problems for us. It causes extreme server loads on our side. So at some point, I can't completely rule out that we might take action on these kind of things. But at least in general, we wouldn't be like devoting or removing these sites from the search results.
And ultimately, can it? I mean, might it also have some effect on tools like autocomplete, messing with that in some way?
It shouldn't. I mean, we have some pretty strong algorithms for that, and we've seen this activity for a long time. So it's not completely new and something that our algorithms should be taking into account.
Okay. Yeah, because one thing interesting that I've seen with autocomplete is, I mean, and different clients have come to me about was regarding certain ones that might have negative queries that come up alongside their business, or you know, maybe businesses that didn't operate very well sometimes have an exceptional amount of negative queries that come up in autocomplete, which, you know, maybe they need to do some good PR instead. But is there, I mean, aside from that, there really isn't much of anything that these bits should be.
I can't think of anything specific there. Yeah. All right. So we ran out of time. Got people waiting for my room here. I'd like to thank you all for your interesting questions and comments. I hope it's been an interesting one for you as well, and I wish you guys a great week.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John.
Thanks, John. You too.
Bye.
See you next week. Bye.